That brings us to step 4. We've understood the audience context, identified the business insights, and transformed them into visual charts. You need to build a narrative, a coherent narrative stitching all of these together. That's what we'll see as a final step. So here, you'll have to understand that organizations are drowning in dashboards. Not so long ago, companies were drowning in Excel spreadsheets, all kinds of tables. And dashboards came in as a savior. From thousands of Excel sheets, unfortunately, we have now stuck with hundreds of dashboards, which still convey no meaning, leaving it to the user to make the interpretation. Data stories can solve that challenge by presenting insights visually, answering key business questions, and driving user action. So data stories have a narrative. They have a strong beginning, middle, and an end. And what is a narrative? Narratives are nothing but outlines. If you had to summarize the story in a few bullet points, that's a narrative. And it's good to have a well thought through beginning, middle, and an end. What should you have in the beginning? Should you start with the context or should you start with the takeaway? These are two different approaches. The conventional narrative is where you start with the context, you share the details to support it, and then you reveal the insights, and then you make the final big reveal, which is the takeaway. This is a conventional structure. Most organizational communication is like this. If you look at any of the PPTs or any of the presentations or the charts you create, most of them follow this approach. But you can make this completely presented the opposite way, which is a pyramid structure. You open with the strong takeaway, tease the audience with a takeaway, share insights to support it, share supporting next level details if required, and all other ancillary context can come later. This lets the user go to the level of detail they want. It grabs their attention and shares what they need to act upon. So the pyramid structure is very powerful, and it can be done in organizations. Taking the same churn example, here's an example of a pyramid narrative. And by the way, before you go into charts, I always advise my team to think through with text. Don't think with PowerPoint or with charts. Think with text. Write down these bullet points. For example, here we are saying customer attrition was 6% higher than target in this quarter due to a dip in customer service and aggressive competitive actions. This is a summary. This is the takeaway. And then you share the details that customers rated as 2.5 on 5 in the quarter, the last quarter. And this was 1.1 points lower than last year's average. And then you share the next level detail, which is there was an attrition in service team, which impacted quality. Competitors also discounted the prices and grabbed market share. And it shares details in terms of how they were acting, what could be their motive. And overall, then we say that in terms of takeaways, actions, we must retrain service personnel and improve customer service and revisit the product pricing and benchmark with the market. So this is an example of how you could string it, and a final example from New York Times for a visual narrative. Let me switch to the browser. Hope you're able to still see it. So here we are looking at a New York Times data journalism story. It starts with the takeaway. Lower income countries have relied on vaccines produced in China, India, and Russia. That's what the headline says. So they are sharing that most of the developing countries have used vaccines produced in these 3 countries. And then you have the next level details. You can see here that Moderna and Pfizer have been administered mostly in the US and European countries. The average GDP is much higher. It's about $30,000 to $40,000. Whereas Oxford AstraZeneca has been administered in a lot of lower middle and low income countries. Sinovac and few others have been administered mostly in lower middle or low income countries. So this shares the supporting detail, and then there is a narrative. If someone wants to read through further and find out what happened, why it happened, you have the text below that. So this is an example of a pyramid narrative, and you can use the same thing in your organization when you present data stories, whether it's on a dashboard or a PowerPoint as well. There's a brilliant quote by Hans Rosling. It says, when we are listening to music, we need to listen to it to understand how beautiful it is. Whereas when we present statistics, we do the equivalent of just showing the notes instead of playing the music, expecting that the audience would be able to appreciate it, which doesn't happen.